Hi, I'm Angela Wamola, head of GSMA Africa, and your host for today's Yellow Chair, your link to the African continent. We're here on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and there will be a host of meetings this week on the sidelines, presenting an opportunity for us to have meaningful conversations on driving digital adoption in Africa. We want to look at how we can move from unlocking potential to unleashing growth in productivity and efficiency in Africa. With me today on the yellow chairs are two gentlemen, two champions in the driver's seat of Africa, with a passion and a mission for this challenge that we have before us in driving and unlocking potential in Africa. Honourable Minister Bosun, he is the Minister of Communications, Innovation and the Digital Economy for the Republic of Nigeria. Welcome, Dr. Tijani.
Thank you, Angela. Good to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have with us as well the President and CEO of MTN Group, Ralph Mupita. Welcome to the Yellow Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
So, gentlemen, tell me, what are your personal expectations from the series of meetings that will be hosted here in the discussions that are happening at UNGA 80?
That's an interesting question, Angela. I think my team did some sort of analysis of all the events that we've seen happening, and we were trying to look at the common themes within all these events. And of course, similar to last year, artificial intelligence was on top, featuring quite strongly across the other key thematic area. And that's something that is also of interest to us as a nation as well. Of course, there's conversations around meaningful and affordable connectivity. There's the digital skills element. But in all of this, we find the focus on artificial intelligence really interesting. So we came prepared to be sure that, let's not just keep having these conversations on AI. We need to have conversations on artificial intelligence that truly is meaningful and can add value to what you said in your introduction, which is about productivity. That's one thing that Africa must focus on driving up in our critical sectors.
What about you?
Yeah, look, I mean, maybe starting more at the kind of geopolitical level, I guess UNGA 80 is quite at an important inflection point in terms of where the globe is more generally. So keen to understand, the conversations that happen at General Assembly. But similar to the minister, to me, the most interesting conversations about AI and how Africa remains engaged in the discussions and participates meaningfully, not to be on the sidelines and watching kind of the global north develop and we stay behind. I mean, one of the big paranoia issues I always say to my team is we mustn't become a digital underclass as Africans, and so we must be in the rooms, be at the table, be in the conversations, and be in the situations where we architect our future, and including. So I join the minister in saying that's something I'm looking forward to in the next couple of days.
Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about the next billion users and how we're going to connect them. Nigeria's scale, innovation, capacity, leadership, just make it a catalyst for digital transformation in Africa. And your ministry plays a very crucial role for Africa in being able to set and enable the pace in various areas. And I'll mention just a couple of them. Number one is the technology ecosystem. Nigeria, Lagos is the home of numerous tech giants, fintech giants in Africa. We also see that you have a very strong, youthful driven tech talent that's really digital natives, and 60% of the population is under the age of 25. Additionally, expanding connectivity infrastructure, as you've mentioned, is at the heart of what you do. And Nigeria is leading Africa in mobile internet adoptions with 150 million active users in data and an average of about 8 gigabits per month per user, right? Compared to the average in Africa, which is about 4 gigabits per user per month. So when you look at this, this context, we want to understand how we're shaping the digital policies and the regulatory environment, not only for Nigeria, but also for Africa as a whole, because of the pace at which you're leading this development. At the same time, Ralph,
Yeah.
in the last episode of the Yellow Chair, you mentioned that in your role as the chief player coach, right? And as well as looking at your role as the deputy chair of the GSMA board, the Global Mobile Association for driving digital connectivity. You know, as a multinational organization, and as you've mentioned, setting your horizon on the long-term sustainability, really putting your eyes across the landscape of the macroeconomics, currencies of the different African nations, as well as the nation states' agendas. I want us to have a conversation in this broadcast on 3 topics: people, platform, and partners. So, first and foremost, let's start off with our African people. Our ability to play in the digital economy in this age of AI, and with all that is needed to do, how do we get there and how do we get to the next level? So I want to use the analogy of football. I hope everybody can relate to football. You know, I think we have a passion in Africa, in the world, for football. So I hope this will help sort of set the scene on what we're trying to talk about today. Assuming both teams, African team versus the world in terms of the digital economy, this is our game. We're trying to get to the World Cup in this game. We each have a goalkeeper, so that's given. But each team needs to have 10 players, right? Now, the latest statistics on the African population as at last week, Worldometer, says that we are 1,557,2,315 Africans. And I'm putting my VAR on the screen right now. We're on the pitch, right? The GSMA 2025 State of Mobile Internet Connectivity, our latest report on the trends in mobile interconnectivity, show that approximately 500 million of our population in Africa are online. That's 30%. And another 1 billion Africans are not online. What does that mean? 70% of our population are stuck in the voice era, still using voice and SMS. So, from this perspective, let's analyze this profile of your 3-man team. We've talked about 30% are online. That's your 3-man team. You need 10 people on the game at the pitch. Of these 3 men, Africans connected with smartphone are only 330 million, and another 80 million are using feature phones. Therefore, in our analogy of the football players, 3 players are on the pitch, 2 have a smartphone, 1 has a feature phone. 2 are using 3G technology, and another 1 maybe is using 4G or 5G. So, from a player coach perspective, who you are limited to this team in using the capacity of the team who can only use 3G in your tactical play compared to the opponents who possibly are using 4G or 5G in their VAR screens and how they analyze their team games, right? And we ask ourselves, where are our missing 7 players, right? Of the 1 billion who are stuck in the voice era, 6 are on the bench. Those are people who are covered by technology, broadband technology, 3G, 4G, 5G. And out of these 6 who are on the bench, 2 have the kit, they're wearing the uniform, but they don't know how to play. Why? They've never gone online. And another 660 million, that's our 4 people, on that 6 people who are on the bench, don't have their kits on, but they have the opportunity to be in the game because they're on the pitch, but just sitting on the bench. They don't have any form of broadband device. And 1, because we need 7, is still in the locker room. They don't have any coverage. No 3G, 4G coverage, right? So, in the proverbial, which came first, the chicken or the egg? How do we get there? Knowing that brick and mortar won't get there, right? And we understand that we need to leverage the readiness of our continent on 1, getting all those on the bench and in the locker room, on the pitch, and number 2, empowering our teams to play their best game, leveraging emerging technologies, AI, to be able to leapfrog all these challenges and be able to take part in this modern connected life. So please share your views on moving forward with this chicken and egg analogy where we find ourselves in. What can we do to move the needle forward? Gentlemen.
Minister.
That is deep, Angela. It's deep, and I think it's as complex as it may sound. It's actually a very strong case to use to explain this. Because when you think of football, I used to play football a bit when I was younger. When you think of football, football is a combination of talent and also training as well. So, and you can look at training from the perspective of you being able to take a raw talent and train it up, add more tools to it. You know, you have the right boat, you train regularly, you have access to the insights that you need to be able to improve yourself. That's what gets you to where you need to be. I think that what you've described there is actually an indication that Africa's challenge is not talent. We do have this talent en masse. I think our biggest challenge is that these talents don't have access to the resources that they need to actually take their talent and turn the talent into, you know, valuable outcomes that we can benefit from, which is what you get in football. And football, that's the case. You see African football is all over the world, right? African teams are, you know, they're great, but at the same time, when we compete at the international level, we find it really difficult to get to the very top, which is where we belong. And most of the time it's because the resources has not been made ubiquitous enough for people, regardless of where they find themselves on the continent, to be able to train their skills to the point where they can be the best professional. I think that's the same case for connectivity. I think when people talk about, we all want to see a prosperous Africa. We want to see an Africa that growth becomes something that we see and celebrate all the time. But we then also have a situation where the world we live in today, growth can only be achieved through the application of modern technologies, in which connectivity is a major part of it. I used to tell people that 10, 15 years ago, telecommunication services were just any other sector. But today it's the backbone for development. There's absolutely, you can't deliver quality healthcare without connectivity. You can't deliver quality education without connectivity. There's no commerce without connectivity. There's really no good transportation without connectivity. You know, the one that I find really even exciting, there's no mining without connectivity. The best mines in the world now are now connected. You can't secure a nation without connectivity, and that's where the case the analogy you were using, which is, we don't have a choice. We can't leave anyone behind. We must include all of our talent, regardless of where they find themselves, whether they're in Samfara, which is in the far north in my country, or they're in Lagos. People, regardless of their location, should have access to meaningful connectivity, because that's the only way we can leverage their talents to help us truly develop our continent.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo the minister's comments, I played football. What position did you play?
I used to defend.
You defend?
I used to defend.
I was on the right wing, so, but you know, those days are long gone. Angela, you asked a set of really interesting questions, particularly the fact that we've got 3 players on the field, and what about you know, the others? I think, as we said with our opening remarks, we have to now be in solution mode. We can't sit and comment without being solution mode. I think the point you raise is, firstly, coverage is not the big issue today. So you have one person out of the 10 who's not in a covered area with kind of wireless networks or fixed networks. I think that we can bridge quite quickly and embrace other technologies. So LEO satellites, I know there's a lot of talk about them at the moment. I see them in the future as a complementary form of connectivity. So you have subsea cables, you have terrestrial networks, and you have LEO networks, all to keep people connected. And in the rural areas, we could do quite a lot of innovative, and I think when we look in other markets, you know, in the rural areas, you know, the regulators are suggesting that competitors collaborate to make sure that, you know, people are not connected because the economics are challenging. The challenging economics should not in of themselves be a reason. So create the frameworks where actually in the very kind of mountainous, deep rural areas, there is a competition framework that says in these areas, please collaborate because we want everybody covered. So the 1 out of the 10, I think we can deal with a bit of regulation, competition, being a bit more open, and then embracing other technologies. The other area is really handsets. Now, I think I'm a stuck record on this thing that we need $20 handsets that are, smartphone. They look like an iPhone or a Samsung, or because no one wants a ugly-looking phone. Let's be clear, because we've even attempted to do some of those, and we realized that actually the issues was they were clunky, etc. So you're going to get them a phone in the hands of a consumer at $20 or less. Now, in India, they've made great progress. I mean, I think there's examples of the Bharat phone, $15 to $20. It's a cloud-based phone, so it's not heavy on the memory. You can put quite a, and it's not heavy on the battery because it's pulling the applications, from the data center. And so they're able to bring the cost of the handset down, because then you have more, and I guess the challenge we face is one also of kind of balancing digital inclusion with kind of fiscal responsibilities, because countries are trying to maximize tax collection for good reasons, and but customs duties in some of our markets is 30%. So a $40 phone, you take away the 30%, you're already in the 20s. So the question is, can 4G, you spoke about 3G, 3G is not a technology of the future, you need 4G plus. So can 4G handsets land in some of the African markets without that as an additional tax, or there is innovating financing around handsets? So I think that's the third area is what the minister spoke about, skilling. We just need to make sure that people are digitally skilled. There are many of our children, young brothers and sisters who are going through education without any form of computer literacy or digital literacy of some sorts. And in today's world, if you're not digitally literate, I mean, you are certainly going to get stuck, kind of in the kind of dark ages, if you want to call it that. So I think handsets become the digital skilling, but I think quite importantly also there's an important partnership between business and the government and public sector. I think there's a role for digital public infrastructure, DPIs, as well as infrastructure provided by. So it's not just a one way. And I mean, I wanted to use the India example again, and if you see what they've been able to do in like a decade to really try and cover everybody in remote India as one in Mumbai, they get decent digital connectivity. In fact, more, I say this with respect, better quality networks in Africa and in the global south than here. So there's some very practical things we can actually do to bring the other players onto the field. But it really does require business and government and civil society partnership to say we can't leave everybody, can't leave anybody behind.
I think just to add to that, Ralph, it's interesting that you spoke to DPI, which touches on when you were discussing digital transformation as well. I think when we look at digital, we also have to be careful that we're not only solving today's problem, but we're also projecting into 3, 4, 5 years' time. Because what makes connectivity truly a platform for growth in society is when you look at it from the whole of society perspective. What people will need to consume in the first place must be meaningfully digitalized, right? The services that people are looking for. Your hospitals must be connected, the schools, the government services must be online. All those things also are a function of the availability of meaningful connectivity, which is why I think, because this is MTN's podcast, which I think is extremely important. It's also important to start to change the conversation around connectivity from just connecting people to people. I think on the African continent, we're going to be delaying fixing our problems if we don't start to make that conversation bigger. Because from where I sit, what I'm seeing is beyond just connecting people to people. It's connecting people to places, connecting machines to machines, connecting society, because that's the only way we can provide security services, right? It's the only way we can provide healthcare services. And it's why the solutions that we'll propose for fixing our connectivity challenges will need to take into consideration all the demands that will come from that entire system. You know, which is why satellite will be important, but it will always be a backup.
It's a backup, exactly.
Because if we don't make that distinction, we're going to see the bulk of the resources to connect the continent now going towards satellite. And we quickly realize that in the case of Nigeria, where you have Starlink doing really well, but they can't meet the demands because satellite, unfortunately, just can't cover what people want to see. I remember 10 years ago, we were looking at the numbers. The average individual in Nigeria compared to today, the amount of data they consume is gone up by 70x. And that's going to continue to grow because we're very youthful. Our young people will want to get into AI. They will want to do gaming. They will want to do things that really would consume. And as we now get affordable devices, I think the cloud phones, I'm a big fan of them as well. They're in between for certain places. There will be places where our people need proper devices.
Exactly. I just want to add on to a couple of the comments the minister's made, and absolutely, we got to go beyond the connectivity with people, and then just how you embrace digital economy more broadly and pervasively. Africa, agriculture must be a game that we must, an area that, you want to use the football analogy, a game we must win. Because we have 70% of the world's arable land. We just got to get yields up. Technology can just enable us, not only yields, but also markets. The farmer who's, let me go to East Africa, somewhere where there's coffee, and they've got 10 bags of coffee. How do they get them to market? How do they get the right price? How do they make sure that they don't get disadvantaged because of a lack of knowledge on pricing and so forth? And because that brings the globe to the village, the farmer who's out in the remote area. So I agree with that it's got to go beyond just our ability to consume. I think the second point is, coming back to DPI, is that if you build the infrastructure in a thoughtful way where you're placing private and public infrastructure together, it can work. And often people are negative about DPI. They say, well, Ralph, why are you positive about it? Because it's a complementary form of infrastructure. And then, Minister, to your point, when I joined MTN in 2017, April, I went to my first board meeting to Nigeria. The average usage was 500 MB. Today we have 14.3 gigs.
Wow.
The average Nigerian on our network is using. And they're just getting started. Just getting started.
I mean, gentlemen, the segue has been just perfect because, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about people, platforms, and then partners. So we've really just gone straight into the discussion of platforms. And you mentioned connectivity being one of them. Now, looking at it from the perspective of, in Africa, we are strong as our weakest link, right? And in global economies, as you've mentioned, India, we're looking at the power of one. How to use that power of one in scaling adoption, innovation, the power of 1 billion people, the power of one policy and regulatory framework or some harmonization in place, the power of one marketplace. Americas have it, China, India, Russia, Europe. Every nation, every region nurtures those hopes, right, of going to the World Cup. Who doesn't want to be in the World Cup? Who doesn't want to at least get to the qualifiers, right? So in this age of AI, as a competitive advantage, supremacy in AI is right at the forefront in all the conversations we're seeing today. Geopolitics, you've mentioned, supply chain. And we need strong leadership, yourselves and others, who can come in to advocate for promoting fair play. In our football analogy, we have them, the referees. They're there. And they use their authority in issuing red cards, yellow cards, to be able to make sure that we can promote equity and we can promote inclusivity in everybody playing the game fairly. When I look at generative AI, it's now being recognized as one of the most powerful technologies of our time. So how do we leverage the power of one in Africa? Africa's marketplace. we have the biggest, the largest trading bloc in the world, the Africa Free Continental Trade Area.
Absolutely.
We have 1.5 billion youthful, talented, digital natives people. Which platforms, as you started mentioning the connectivity as one platform, do you think, in your opinion, can help us really drive the digital economy so that we can now use AI as our competitive advantage in the midst of all our challenges in Africa?
No, I think if I can take a stab at that, Angela, I think with AI, you actually touched on some important things there. Then you added a bit of more to it, of course. You talked about sovereignty, which is alluding to the global geopolitics and competition. And I think as leaders, we can quickly get sucked into that and actually forget what artificial intelligence is all about. This is a phenomenon that is going to widen the gap amongst nations, amongst businesses when it comes to productivity. It will skyrocket it. I think, Ralph was already talking about agriculture earlier, which is an area where I'm extremely excited about. You look at in Nigeria, we consume a lot of maize, but the average yield per 1 hectare of maize farm in Nigeria is 2.5 tons. South Africa is the best on the continent, which is around 5 to 6 tons. Brazil is already eating 10 to 12 tons on some farm, the same 1 hectare. And it's not GMO or anything. It's precision farming. Connectivity, knowing exactly where the seed is going, where the herbicide is going, where the fertilizer needs to go. And you're able to get more from that. What you're going to end up getting is that the gap is going to continue to widen. So for me, I think when I came into being a minister, of course I was looking at the geopolitics and getting involved. But you quickly then realize that you have two roles. Sovereignty is important and you have to find ways to protect it. But the bits that most people are not talking about, that with our population, I think Africa must focus on, is the absorptive capacity to actually use AI. It doesn't matter whether for now the server that is processing the AI that the African farmer in my village will use is based in San Francisco. What matters is that that AI can speak the language of that
100%.
farmer. And that I've built as a minister the enabling environment to allow that AI to get to that farmer, which is going to include connectivity, that farmer is connected, they have affordable devices to use it, that there's local talent to help that farmer appropriate that technology. And I think most importantly, which is what Nigeria launched yesterday, that AI can actually speak our language. That's why we launched our own large language model. We've been working on it for a while. It's multilingual, multimodal. We were going to keep it close, but you know what we decided? Let's open source it.
Open source it, yeah.
The
100%.
first problem we want to solve is that anyone building AI for the world should not be building AI that doesn't speak my language. That's a problem, because you don't want the best solutions not being useful in our country. Then once we're able to do that, what we've done is provide a platform for our young population to be able to leverage AI to solve real problems. Then we start to then have that capacity and start to think, how do we mobilize more resources on the sovereign side of things? Most of us use electricity today. We don't ask where it was invented.
Exactly.
Internet, we all use internet. We don't ask where it was invented. East Africa made the most of mobile money, of mobile phone. But you're not asking whether that phone is coming from China. Right? So there's still the absorptive capacity, the ability to use this technology to fix our productivity issue that is separate from this whole competition around who is making the most money out of it. Yeah, sovereignty is important, don't misunderstand me. We're working on it. I'm big on inclusion, I'm big on protection, but I think we can be distracted from focusing on deepening absorptive capacity if we engage in that game. We've not invested in data science. We've not invested in machine learning for a long time. We're not just going to come from nowhere and become a major player in the frontier side of AI or in the foundational side. But let's not miss the opportunity to make sure that it actually works for us.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the thing we have is to avoid this risk of being a digital underclass by getting caught up in some of the narratives and debates that actually potentially slow us down and create an even wider gap. So, to the minister's points, let's get stuck in and get you have 2,000 African languages. You won't get all of them in one day, but I think if you get to 100 or 200, you've made enough of an impact and get ingested in these LLMs so that we have, we have lots of customer data phoning us in the local language. Get those processed through so that we build our own, we build models that talk to our people. That farmer in middle northern Nigeria, he wants to speak in the vernacular.
Yes.
He doesn't want to be forced to speak English. Okay? And they might feel more confident speaking their vernacular.
Absolutely.
Technology should enable that. And people should not feel embarrassed or feel
excluded.
Exactly, excluded, but purely because they think this is a tool. The internet is for people who speak English, French, whatever. So we've got to put all our languages in there, and we have a responsibility in the private sector with government to build our own, and then think about where do we build even some of the infrastructure like the data centers, and say, look, yes, we're not building 1 gigawatt or 97 1 gigawatt, data centers. Over the next year, like they're doing in the US, so 97 gigawatts of capacity needed in the near term. We will need our own workloads, so we must also start thinking, and then think with the mindset of how are we solving very deeply African problems, because some of our problems are quite unique.
Yes.
Getting blood transfusion out of Kigali into the remote areas. We have drones doing that. Nowhere else in the world do you have people moving, blood transfusion with drones. We have to, because the nature of our infrastructure, we're leapfrogging. So I agree that we must get stuck in, and then we'll deal with the sovereign issues, as we go along. And we must, coming back to your point, maybe I'm leading a little bit on this one, is partnerships. We can't do it all alone. So let's crowd in these global partnerships that can make sense for us.
Yeah. And I think for the audience as well, I'm a minister, and I know that there's serious conversation around sovereignty.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is not saying we'll come back to.
Yeah.
I think the leaders are focused on it. We're part of the platforms where this conversation is being had.
Yeah.
But our goal is to ensure that we don't get distracted into focusing on just that.
Yeah.
Because whenever you go to these international gatherings, the conversation is on the competition.
Yeah.
Because the countries that are leading, they already figured out the whole absorptive capacity, how it's going to work for them, where the data centers will be to ensure they can use AI. All those things are ongoing. The talents, they're working on it. They've been doing research on it for long. So if we're not careful, what we don't want to do is just put the emphasis only on sovereignty. When we actually can't even use it.
Exactly. And that's great, because that's when you mentioned just now looking at the next sort of link, which is the partnerships. We tend to see in any football game the players, the coach, and the referees. But behind every great game is a phenomenal supporting team. The people who are behind the scenes, what we're talking about right now. And these are the ones who are, like in this football game, the national, the regional federation, football federations, who help provide the enabling environment, who help enable and promote investment into the game, because you need to have a great talent pipeline of players, right, who can play throughout and build them from all the way from little league to the national championships. You need to have the pitches, right, as you mentioned, sovereign or not sovereign, right? Avoid the distraction. You'd rather play your game on the home side, right? But sometimes you have to go to the other side and play the game there. You also need trained coaches, right? And lastly, we also need to look at facilitating tournaments, right? Promoting that sustainable investment climate. Somebody needs to keep on helping these teams to go out there, practice, play, get into the qualifiers, find out if you can be a winner. So with your experience, and you've mentioned, and your insights as leaders, trying to navigate these conversations in all these places, particularly even now today here at the UNGA, what would be your winning partner strategy to have every nation, number one, field a team to be the qualifiers, and number two, to promote that equity, that inclusivity, so that we don't have players who have teams that are less than half people on the team sitting on the bench, or in the watching from the locker room, because they just don't have either the kit, which is the phone, or the capacity, the digital skills and the talents, right? So could you give us some of your thoughts in in the kind of winning partner strategy we should have or you would promote in your conversations here at the UNGA?
Yeah, look, I mean, from our side, partnership starts also with partnerships, the regulators, sitting with the private sector hat on. I mean, the first important partnership is, the regulators and the governments that we work in. We call in the nation states we operate in, they're your first partners because they create the enabling environment from a regulatory and so forth, to be able to invest and build a business that serves people. So I think that partnership is the most fundamental because we're leveraging spectrum, which is a national asset. We're putting our infrastructure, we need right-of-ways and so forth. So if that is a foundational partnership that needs to work, and I must say, credit to the minister for the fantastic work he's doing in Nigeria, and also is picking up the role around subsea cables to make sure that Africa remains secure. So I say that that's the first partnership. I think the second is looking at the society that you're engaged in. And I think right now the big thing for me is the youth. How do we make sure that the youth dividend Africa will have the next 20 to 30 years is not a wasted one?
That's right.
Where it's actually not a youth dividend, it actually becomes a curse. And where you have all these young people with their ambitions who want to have a better life, and they get stuck. This is the moment to resolve that, to ensure that we're giving the youth, not to say people as old as I am should not be, a focus, but
I'm trying to
say I'm young.
Classify yourself as youth.
I'm youth, Minister. I'm youth. Only my kids don't believe I'm young. But I mean, on a serious note, I mean, those teenagers from 10 to 30, they are going to be the people who are going to build the Africa we've been waiting for.
That's right.
So we must empower them, digitally skilling, exposing them, and creating as many advantages as we can for them to participate with AI. Because it's very nascent right now. And as I think it was Eric Schmidt who said AI is underhyped. He says it's underhyped, not overhyped, because we just don't know where it will take us.
That's right.
But like electricity, the moment you have electricity in your home, you're going to figure out what to do. People will figure that out. And we have to take a similar approach that this thing is as fundamental as electricity. And without it, we are going to really leave our people behind.
No, I think this partnership one, and Ralph really articulated it strongly, is one that we need to clarify that it's not the usual mantra of we must partner. It's actually absolutely important because of the urgency of where data transformation is going. A lot of the technologies that we're seeing, how quickly they're advancing. You can't find one part of the puzzle accelerate the development that we need to see in Africa quickly enough. Government can't do it. Private sector alone cannot do it. Right? The civil society would not be sufficient to be able to accelerate. That's why we need to bring everyone to the table. If you see what we've been able to do in Nigeria, typically government is slow to things. When I came in and I decided I was going to train 3 million technical talent, MTN chime in, IHS chime in, Airtel, contributed, and boom, we started the largest talent accelerator program in the world. If I was waiting for government, budget cycle would need to come, budget release and things like that, and it would take forever. It's the same with the large language model that we've just released yesterday. It was done in partnership with a private company, Awari, which is a local startup, that was able to build a framework. Now the same framework is being made open for other African countries to actually get on collecting data. And I was going to challenge MTN to also start to support in helping countries. Let's fund some of this data collection. Because I think that's where we can also play as well. So we need to mobilize resources for it. If we're ever going to fix, what's it called, for instance, compute, we're also going to get to the point where we need to mobilize resources. You were talking about the data set that you gather. It's the same with government. When I look at the data set that we have for our national TV, a TV station that has been there for years, all the tapes and the recordings they've had, imagine using that to train a model. So to truly quickly leapfrog AI in Africa, we can, but it has to be a collaborative effort. We have to be funding academic research because we've not funded them for too long. I think in South Africa, the folks there are lucky because the strongest part of the AI ecosystem in South Africa is actually the academic. not
Exactly.
the other way, which is, so we need to see more people funding those things, and we have to do them quickly. The urgency is why partnership must be at the top of the approach that we take to get this done.
Minister's challenge accepted. We'll support you.
Fantastic. So this is on this call we've recorded.
We've recorded it.
Our
It's
large
done.
language model is called N Atlas. And you know the interesting thing about it, the N is Nigeria.
Yeah.
The Atlas is actually African tongues and languages at scale.
Perfect.
So the idea is that other countries can literally say, Sierra Leone can say S Atlas, and you can collect the data using the framework. And it doesn't cost too much to fund
We
our
like
young
that.
people to
We like
actually
these
go
kind of
collect
partnerships.
Wow.
this data.
Wow.
Yeah.
Challenge accepted.
Indeed, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the mission, the passion around the sector that we are in. We're in the right time to be part of this move towards making Africa part of the digital economy. Now, we've heard about people, we've talked about platforms, and we've talked about the partnerships that we have. Your parting shot, in closing, what excites you most about where we are today, your conversations here in UNGA, and the change you believe we'll be able to make?
Look, I might be repeating some of the stuff Minister and I have commented on. I'm supremely passionate about, Africa's prospects the next 30 years. And that's why I get out of bed in the morning, is thinking about the next 30 years and saying, how do we ensure that our people have dignity, hope, and opportunity? And the digital economy, I think, is the best bet on that. I might be biased, because of where, but to what the minister said, the issue with the digital economy as well as AI, this thing, this is foundational stuff. It's going to touch every area of people's lives, work, etc. And we can't leave it, to chance how we architect the outcomes we want. Because the outcomes we want is people are digitally included, they're economically included, they have dignity. This dignity point for me is a very important point, because poverty can create all sorts of indignity.
That's right.
But embracing technology should take all of that away. And so, during this week of UNGA, to me, the real conversations that I'm focused on are the ones where I can see how can we take, back to the partnership example from the minister, what partnerships do we believe we can bring in our ecosystems back home on the African continent? And how do they help the youth? And then how do they help what I call some of the most foundational industries that we have? Agriculture, we spoke about it a bit. Healthcare is key. Education, mining, and logistics, and creating e-commerce. We haven't spoken about payments.
Yeah.
I think the other area we need to think about is how do we create a much more pervasive payment system across Africa, where we're able to make trade across borders much easier. Right now, if you want to get money from Nigeria to Ghana or vice versa, you're talking about what is the most trusted currency. It's the dollar. But we're going into the world of stable coins and cyber currencies, and us as Africans, we must keep an eye on that as well, because that's going to be the glue that drives the kind of e-commerce side of some of the stuff that but those are the conversations I'm looking forward to.
Fantastic.
Yeah. No, I think for me the excitement is truly based around the fact that we're an extremely youthful continent. I think it's 2030 or 2050 we're projected to be that 40% of the world's youth population will be based in Africa. I think naturally these are digital native people. I think we're seeing the growth of digital technologies on the continent. That is also getting to the level where we can actually start to see opportunities being created for people. And I think we're also seeing leadership in this sector that excites me. You're seeing really progressive young leaders in the sector with good understanding of the sector. In the private sector, we're seeing people who understand why we need to push this at the leadership level. I think we're in a position where when you take all these different elements and you put them together, we can quickly accelerate building platforms for those young people to acquire the right skill set, but to also build for the continent as well. And when we're able to do that, not only will Africa actually end up powering the world in terms of workforce, we'll also have a workforce that is able to help us build the solutions that we need to see in those things you mentioned, in agriculture, in education, in logistics,
Yeah.
because without the workforce is not possible. So I think what we have, however, is the challenge, the urgency, right? That we have to quickly build that platform for them, so that that youthful opportunity we're talking about doesn't end up becoming a burden.
Yeah.
That is actually a dividend. So that urgency is why collaboration is important. We have to all get together, whether it's on the government side, on the private sector, and also internationally as well.
Exactly.
We need partners to help us accelerate this development really quickly.
Awesome. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this episode of the Yellow Chair with our guests here, Honourable Minister Dr Bosun Tijani,
Thank you, Angela.
Ralph Mupita. Thank you very much for being with us on the Yellow Chair, your link to the African continent.